Hello and welcome to An Old Man Watches. And today I'm going to be talking about the 1974 blaxploitation picture Jive Turkey, also known as Baby Needs a New Pair of Shoes, and at least one other title that includes a racial slur I have no intention of using, but which you will hear a whole lot if you actually do watch the movie. And in this film, we meet small-time racketeer Pasha, who runs the numbers game in his home city, while his childhood buddy Big Tony runs the drugs. It's a pretty cosy arrangement, really, for the two men, and Pasha likes it that way. He runs his business, Tony runs his, everybody's happy, right? Well, unfortunately, no, not everyone is happy. The cops, obviously, aren't too keen, for one thing, and now there's the mafia, who intend to take over both Tony and Pasha's operations. As far as the mob are concerned, both the men must either give up their livelihoods or lose their lives. The mob, however, has miscalculated. Pasha might be happiest with the quiet life, but he's not about to give up what he's built without a fight, and he has a considerable weapon at hand in the person of his bodyguard/assassin Serene. She's 6 feet of death on stilettos. Now, this is not a technically good film. The lighting is muddy, the acting's uneven, but a film doesn't have to be technically good to be entertaining if it has enough verve and moxie. Alas, I don't feel that Jive Turkey quite has that verve and moxie. It promises it at times, and it does have its positive elements, and there are people out there who like it, but overall it didn't do it for me. So let's talk about the positives and negatives in a bit more detail. So I think, first of all, I have to acknowledge that I really enjoyed the opening 10 minutes or so of the film. Jive Turkey begins with the notice, "This is a true story. Only the names, places and events have been changed." Which is a suitably bonkers bit of nonsense to pique my interest. I mean, so it's true except for everything that is not true, which is all of it. It's completely nonsensical as a statement, but it's the kind of silliness that makes me go, oh, maybe you're going to be interesting at least. And it follows up that opening with a gloriously over-the-top conference between Pasha and his Italian-American mafia counterpart, Frank, in which Frank warns Pasha that Chicago has a contract out on you, and Pasha needs to resign himself to losing his business or his life. Well, our main character pretends to take this warning to heart, but the fact that he has Serene murder Frank's bodyguard on the way out is probably a much better indication of his true intentions than what he says to Frank. I like this opening. It's punchy, it's fun, it's a bit silly. It piqued my interest. Unfortunately, after this fun opening 1-2 bit of goofiness, the movie just lost all its steam. There's a lot of time spent where people talk about things happening, like police raids on Pasha's business, but most of those events don't happen on screen. Presumably, this is a budgetary concern. Filming a couple of people sitting around talking is a lot easier and cheaper than filming the events that they are discussing. To do a police raid, you'd need a bunch of extras in police uniforms, probably a couple of cop cars, and some stunt choreography that needs to be worked up as they rough up some crooks and smash up Pasha's stuff. That's a lot more work, a lot more money than two people saying, the cops came in and smashed everything up. Yeah. Now, the movie does a few times make the effort to include an action scene, but they're ultimately all pretty humdrum affairs. There's not a lot of verve to them. The only enlivening note really was when Serene returns for a spot of murder by drugging some guys and then beating them to death with her high heels. And even that is ultimately a bit better in concept than in its execution. And then we get to the climax of the film, or the supposed climax of the film, where Pasha and Frank face off in a finale that, frankly, made me doubt both men's intelligence. It's hard to care very much about the outcome of a battle between two people who seem so determined to fail. So, I wanted to end on a positive note, and there is one, in terms of Serene. The best thing about this movie is Serene, not only because the role is decently performed and she has kind of all the best scenes, but because it's a surprisingly progressive portrayal. Even today, it's rare to see a transgender character portrayed positively in a piece of media, unless that piece of media is specifically about being transgender. So, to see a relatively positive portrayal in a near 50-year-old blaxploitation film is, a bit of a pleasant surprise. Now, to be clear, in calling this a positive portrayal, I'm not saying that Serene is a nice or a good person. I mean, she's not. She's a killer for hire. So I'm using a fairly limited term of positive here, by which I mean that her status as a killer is never in any way associated with the fact that the character is transgender, nor is she depicted as a subject of sexual fetish or as sexually dysfunctional herself. The fact that she was clearly not assigned female at birth is largely ignored by the film. Serene is just, this badass killer, basically. And she is at least treated equally with everybody else. Now, the role is portrayed by drag performer Don Edmondson under his stage name of Tawny Tan, and I interpret the character as transgender, even though Mr. Edmondson was not, because we never see her attired in anything but glamorous women's outfits, and everyone uses female pronouns for her. But even if we're not supposed to interpret the character as transgender, but merely as a man in drag, that's still a relatively positive portrayal of an LGBTQ character at a time in history when same-sex couples could still be arrested for kissing in public. There was a strict no-touching rule at LGBT clubs of the time, for instance, in California. So, at the end of the day, Jive Turkey is a bad and often rather dull movie, but it does have a couple of elements that make me mourn the movie it might have been if it had lived up to the promise of those elements. Next time, one of the several Pixar films to launch a multi-billion-dollar toy franchise in 2006's Cars. But that's next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.